Patricia Talks.
Welcome to Patricia Talks, the show where you get to hear stories from everyday people about their extraordinary lives, from authors to sports personalities, TV personalities and entrepreneurs. Welcome to Patricia Talks. My guest today is Adrian Forbes, lead coach for Luton Town. Adrian is a former professional footballer who began his coaching career at Norwich City. Adrian Forbes, welcome to Patricia Talks.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Not too bad. It's been a bit strange coming to meet you down here in London today as a London boy, not been in this part of London for a long time, so it was quite interesting battling my way through the traffic, but great to be back here in this, the area that I grew up, some might say dragged up in before I moved off to Norwich, so yeah, great to be here.
Nice. So tell me a bit about your family background and then sort of come forward to where you were brought up.
Well, grew up in North West London, a very, strong mum and dad, brought me up in the right way, taught me the real importance of respect, of manners, etc. 3 older sisters that used to beat me up on a daily basis, which was always fun.
Strength of character.
Indeed, and I think it did give me some strength of character as I grew up, and obviously a younger brother as well. Mum and dad still live in Greenford, as I say, where I grew up, where I went to school, where a lot of the family still live. So, that is, for me, that is still home, albeit leaving home at such a tender age of 16. I've probably spent more time away from London than I have in London, but for me, Greenford, North West London will always be home.
So Greenford's home. So you left home at 16?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I was fortunate enough that I was, thanks to my mum and dad, I was born with a talent I could kick a ball around, and the opportunity to try and realise that dream of becoming a professional footballer came my way, and albeit it came my way in Norwich, which was a little bit strange considering, as I say, I was born and bred and grew up in London. So basically had my last GCSE on the Friday, and before I knew it, I'd moved to Norwich on the Sunday, and then the next chapter of my life began.
Nice. So let's go back a bit, Adrian. So you were born with this talent. When did you develop your interest in football? I
think I always had an interest in football. I think you watch TV and you see this wonderful game, you see this stadium, these great arenas and so many people there watching and people cheering certain people's names. If we go back, I was an Arsenal fan growing up, the likes of David Rocastle, may he rest in peace, he was the sort of person I looked at. And then as time went on, it was Paul Ince and Ian Wright, but David Rocastle was probably the first one I looked at and I was like, wow, I want to be like you. Not just wanting to be like him because he was a footballer and a talented footballer, but the reality of it was he was a black footballer as well. Someone that looked like me on the TV screen, like everyone, he's running around this red and white kit and everyone loves him. I want to be like that person. And I think for me growing up as well, in the playground, I seemed to be able to play football quite well. In the local park, I seemed to be able to play football quite well. But interestingly, as I said about my mum and dad earlier, staunch West Indians from St Kitts, they didn't necessarily see football originally as a way of life to a certain extent. Anyone out there will know West Indians is cricket. I could not play cricket. I tried, horrendous. It was all about football for me.
So who introduced you to cricket?
Dad, because I used to go and watch my dad play cricket every Sunday in Southall, and I used to sit there with a picnic and watch him go in and bat. And he'd go in and bat, and as soon as he'd gone into bat, he'd be coming back to sit next to me again because he wasn't in bat for particularly long. But that was all I knew. But really my passion was football. So I'd watch my dad play, but I'd go home and see what football was on the TV. And I think that passion continued to grow, and I continued to go to school, be good at it. I continued to go to school and get better and better and better. And unfortunately, eventually, Dad gave me the opportunity to join a local team in Norfolk at the time, a team called Larkspur Rovers. Went and trained there, and I was fortunate enough that team actually ended up being quite successful. And I think it all stemmed from your David Rocastle, the arenas, the adulation that these people were getting, and I wanted to try and create a life for myself playing that game, and fortunately I was lucky to achieve it.
So how old were you when you joined your first club?
So I was actually an under 10 when I joined my first club in Larkspur Rovers, and how the journey actually happened, there were 2 teams, one in Norfolk, Larkspur, and one in Hounslow called West Middlesex Colts. And what happened for the first couple of years as an under 10 and as an under 11, Larkspur and West Middlesex were first and second in the league every year. Bitter rivals. We'd get to the cup finals, it'd be Larkspur versus West Middlesex. We'd win, they'd win. And then the 2 managers at the time, a chap called Lee Spencer and Jim O'Shea, decided, well, why don't we just come together and make one force? So they did, and we were amazing. And we were literally clearing up season after season after season. We were the team to be reckoned with. And off the back of that, actually, what happened was Norwich City Football Club put together a competition each year called the Canary Cup. And what that did, they basically contacted every league around the whole of the country. And we're talking Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland. Who are the best teams? Who's won everything across all age groups? We invite you to Norwich and we're going to play a competition. This team from London, West Middlesex Colts, we won it at under 11s and won it at under 12s. Best team in the country by far. So it was really, quite a good achievement. And actually what happened when I was playing for West Middlesex Colts in the final in Norwich, actually at Norwich City's main ground, there were scouts there that saw some ability in me and asked if I'd be interested in coming for a trial. Mum and Dad originally were like, no, it was a flat no. So it took a lot of phone calls from the scouts at Norwich and a lot of persuasion from me for me to get the opportunity to, travel up there, trial. I did that eventually, and they offered me what was classed as a schoolboy contract then, and what that entailed was basically at 11, 12 years old, going across from Greenford Station on the Central Line to Liverpool Street, getting on what I called the big train then, from Liverpool Street to Norwich. You'd meet 4 or 5 other people in London that may have come from Bristol or Cardiff, Swansea. We'd travel up, stay overnight in a bed and breakfast, play a game somewhere in the country on the Sunday, travel back down and go back to school. And I did that from basically under 11s all the way up to under, 15, 16s when I then moved to Norwich full time.
Wow, so were you making this journey on your own as a young person
Yeah,
back then?
I was. My dad took me across London first of all on the tube. And then after that, it was like, right, the journey now, you'll be okay. I'm 11, 12 years old. Really? Yeah, but you'll be fine, you'll be fine. So I was like, okay, and you want to be big and brave. You don't want to disappoint your dad, do you? So I just went with it. And actually, the first 3 or 4 times, it was really quite daunting. But the beauty of living in Greenford, excuse me, and where Liverpool Street Station was, and I can tell you now, it was 46 minutes exactly from Greenford to Liverpool Street.
Wow.
So you just got on at the start, you sat in your seat and you didn't have to get off anywhere. Probably the most daunting bit, to be honest with you, was getting off that train, going up through the underground, up through the escalators, through the ticket barriers, and actually finding platform 9 to get the train from Liverpool Street to Norwich. But character building.
That's great character building for such a young person. Mm-hmm. And I guess that must have gone some way in preparing you for the pitch.
Yeah, it did, because if you're in a situation where you can handle Liverpool Street Station, for anyone that's been to Liverpool Street Station, you know how manic and crazy that is. And there's me with my bag, pulling my bag along for all these big people. Bearing in mind I'm 11, 12. And if you look at the size of me now at 5'7", I've never been a particularly tall guy.
Sure.
Anyway, so yeah, everyone seemed that bit bigger. It was daunting, but you almost got to a situation where you did it so often and were so used to it, it didn't really faze you anymore. And I think if I look at that period of time now, probably if I go back, and this is something that I have said to my dad, now with me being a father of 3 and having a son that is actually 11 now, Dad, how could you send me to do that? I'd never let my baby, he's 11,
do that.
If he heard me calling him a baby, he wouldn't be happy, but I'd never let my baby do that. But my dad just turned around and go, you come out all right.
I guess there's that. It's a different generation.
Yes.
It's a different time. Mm-hmm. I can understand your level of anxiety in the current situation that we're living in. So you've spoken about the daunting experience of travelling on your own at such a young age. What were some of the other challenges you faced once you got to the destination and you were on pitch?
I think before we talk about the pitch, I think one of the other daunting or challenging things were, and it's my reality at that time, was I was going to Norfolk in the mid-90s. There was no one that looked like me in Norfolk in the mid-90s. Sure. There wasn't, other than myself and other black players that are coming up from London to Norfolk. There was no one else that looked like me. So we was all staying in a bed and breakfast. 15, 20 players. The footballers that with me, there's probably 4 or 5 black players, but the people that owned it, white. If you happened to go to a shop, anyone you went anywhere was white. So that in itself was challenging, and that in itself was very strange for me, because people up there innocently, because they hadn't seen anyone that looked like me. I can remember someone actually going, I've only seen someone that looks like you on the telly. And almost like, are you? Yes, I'm real. Yeah. And actually, I look back now and, potentially I could have been offended by that. But I think probably, and I go back to the upbringing I was given, I probably understood at a really young age that actually, do you know what? It's not their fault. I wouldn't necessarily class it as a learnt behaviour, but if they're not seeing people like me all the time in their domain, in their environment, then of course it's going to be something completely different. So that was challenging in itself. And then
how did you manage that? Because that must have been quite a culture shock, because living in London and in northwest London or in Greenford, I guess there's a vast difference between going to Norwich now and not seeing very many people that look like you at all. How did you manage that?
Yeah, I think you, at the time, at 11, I probably, without sounding silly, probably didn't think anything of it. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't find it offensive. I didn't find it abusive. I didn't see anything wrong in it, because I was an innocent 11, 12-year-old. And because, as you've just said, growing up in northwest London, in a really diverse, culturally different area, where you had black, white, Asian, Chinese, you had it all there. So you didn't necessarily see colour, you didn't necessarily see different races, you just saw, well, that's my mate, and he happens to be Asian, and that's my mate, and that was me. So I didn't think anything of it. I think probably now I look back and I'm a bit older and a little bit wiser, I'm a bit like, if I knew now what I knew then, I probably would have reacted differently.
Sure.
But I took no offence from it. I just got my head down and did my work. I knew why I was there, and I just focused on that. But no, listen, if I look back now, I don't hold any remorse or feel upset by some of the things that were said to me then, because that was then, that was the era. There wasn't many people like me in Norfolk, and it was all new for them and all strange for them, as it was new and strange for me.
Because interestingly, Adrian, there have been several other footballers, black football players, who have experienced racism at a really, really deep level. What was your experience aside of those ones that were off the pitch? Take us to the pitch now and tell us what some of the challenges might have been for you then.
Well, you've got loads. You've got people. The bananas being thrown, the people calling you a black this or a black that. If you play really well, you're the best thing since sliced bread. But if you're rubbish, all of a sudden your skin colour comes into play. But I was the same player last week that I am now. I was brilliant last week, but now I'm a black so-and-so because I've misplaced a pass. And it's one of those things that you can't condone it, you can't put up with it. But unfortunately, you go onto the pitch knowing that you might get it. I mean, I had a situation where, and this is well documented, it's out there in the press to see, where I was actually playing for Swansea, and I'm going slightly away from Norwich, a bit further on in my career, playing for Swansea. And I went for on goal, 0-0, a couple of minutes left on the clock. I get fouled, we get a free kick, one of the players, Lee Trundle, scores, we win the game with minutes to go. And as I'm coming off the pitch, someone actually says, "Oi, Forbesy." So because someone's called me Forbes, I think, they must know me. I look in the stand and someone goes, "You cheating black." So I was like, "What? What did you say?" And he said it again, "You cheating black." I was like, and I was actually in so much disbelief, and I can clearly remember myself going, "Wow." And there was a steward actually for Oxford United stood right next to me, and I went, "Did you hear that?" He went, "Surely he didn't just say that." I went, "He did." I went, "I bet you're not brave enough to say it again." And brazen, the guy went, "You cheating black." I was like, wow, okay. Unfortunately, we're going back several years now. The steward heard it and reported it, and that person actually got a suspended sentence off the back of it. So
who was it? Was it a spectator?
It was a fan. It was just an Oxford United fan. Yeah, and he was actually on a corporate day out from work. And he said it. Unfortunately, on that day, it was dealt with. The steward was there. He did hear it, and he was great in his job role in that actually did report it to the right powers that be, and something was the sanctions were taken. But throughout my career, do I sit here and go, I faced it constantly? No. Do I sit here and go, yes, 100% I experienced it and it was out of order? Yes. I played for Millwall for 2 years, and it's well documented some of the issues that Millwall have had. And I will go on record and say Millwall as a club is unbelievable. Fantastic club. People behind the scenes are superb. But they also know what their reputation is. And I know firsthand, because I've been there, they fight tooth and nail week in, week out to put on educational sessions to try and change that stigma and try and change people's thought processes. But yeah, I faced it there.
Sure.
I faced it there, and I can remember a situation there where I went playing for Millwall against Nottingham Forest, went in for a tackle, me and another player, another black player, had a little bit of a tussle up against the boards just in front of the fans. Nothing malicious, we picked each other up, dusted each other down, and all of a sudden, the Millwall fans start racially abusing the Nottingham Forest player. So I actually sit there and go, "Whoa, what are you going on about?" And one of them goes, nah, you're all right, Forbesy, because you're one of us. But that black, he needs to sort himself out. And when you hear that, you're going, you know what chance have we got? What chance as a nation, what chance as a group of people have we got to change that perception and change that for a person's belief, where I'm wearing the blue Millwall kit, so I'm one of them, so I'm fine. But him in the red Nottingham Forest, we're going to go for his colour. So not on, disgraceful, disgusting. It is part of the game, but it should not be part of the game. And all I can do, you know, in the position that I am in now, in that try and encourage people when they do face it, speak up, be strong, be confident and believe in yourself when you speak up, but also encourage the authorities, the key stakeholders, the hierarchy of clubs. And, you know, when I say key stakeholders, the Premier League, the Football League, the FA, the EFL, support black players, support black coaches if they do find it, because we're not going to go out there and make it up. It's not something we're just going to go, oh, this happened when it didn't. But we need someone to call upon. We need someone that we know we can trust. Troy Townsend does a lot of work around it, and we know we can go to him. And we can
What is his role?
So from he's kick it out, and he would be the main man that you would go to for any issues that you would have, any racial abuse that you might find within the game, from a fan, from a teammate, from a management, whoever it may be. You would go to kick it out, and Troy would be your port of call that would look to put in any sanctions or make sure that the case or your story is followed through its entirety, and actually there is some form of repercussions for that person that does it. But it can't be one organisation. It's got to be multiple organisations that all have the same cause, multiple organisations that are following the same key messages and the same key structures to make sure that those people that are brave enough to racially abuse anyone are held accountable.
So, Adrian, surely you're aware of some of those players that you mentioned earlier that were your role models. Mm-hmm. Did you have any idea that they experienced racism before you actually started playing football yourself?
Not really, because it wasn't necessarily spoke about then. And again, you know, when we spoke a few minutes ago about me going on the train across London, it's a different era then. And I don't necessarily think those players had someone to call out, call upon, or someone to speak to, or someone that they knew, actually, you know what, I face that, I'm now going to go and speak to my boss or my chairman or my chief executive about it. Because in the era then, you know, now I look back, it was pretty much a case of, I'll get on with it. Don't worry about that, he didn't mean it. Well, no, what's the big deal? No, it is a big deal, and it was a big deal. So yeah, I would love to see those players in that era, the likes of David Rocastle, have someone that they could go to and they could call upon in these situations. And, you know, we look at that era, it has got better, 100% it has got better, but it's still nowhere near where it should be for the next generation of young, up-and-coming black footballers and coaches. It needs to be better for them, so they have someone that they know they can trust.
Because some say, actually, that it hasn't got better. Some feels that it's been there and it still is. Maybe social media might have made the change. What do you think the difference is now compared to then? I
think the difference now compared to then is it's easier for people to racially abuse and racially attack someone. You mentioned social media there. You know, people can hide, and keyboard warriors, the trolls, whichever word you want to call them, people can now hide behind a fake picture or a fake name and say what they want, and they're not going to be held accountable. There's, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, whoever it may be, no one actually goes, actually, we can see that post by you, and there's going to be some form of sanction. Now, at the end of the day, if us or me as a footballer, when I'm playing and I swear at anyone, I get a yellow card for foul and abusive language. But that person in the stand can say whatever they want, nothing's done. If I get racially abused as a player playing and I retaliate and I go after that person in the crowd, I'm the one that gets some form of sanction, whether it be 3-4 game ban, a monetary fine, but this, you're banned for a few weeks or you're banned indefinitely.
Because historically that has happened actually to some of players.
It has, and you can understand why people would react in that way. And do I think that things have got better? When I say things have got better, I think things have got better from a point of view is now there are people that you can speak to. Now there are more black footballers playing, so you've almost got a bit of an allegiance with there. But actually from a point of view of stopping people being racist to black players and coaches,
no change.
There's no change. And if anything, because of the invent of social media, it's now more accessible, it's easier, and now, to a certain extent, it's in your living room when you're at home. When you open up that social media page when you get home after a game, it's there. So it's more live, it's more in your face, it's more intrusive than it was. And until the authorities actually find a way to do something about that and hold those people accountable, I really can't see how we're going to really impact and affect change.
So in terms of progression within the game, what do you think the chances are in terms of black players versus non-black players in terms of progression? Do you think there were some challenges there?
Some real big challenges there. And I think, you know, the shame with that is, you know, if I look at my coaching role, my role at the moment and the coaches that I'm with, they're all right, but I'm equally as good as they are. In quite a few cases, I'm higher qualified than they are. They're nice people. They're good lads. They're good ladies. That's all that matters. But the reality still remains that there will always be someone in a crowd somewhere that will have an issue with you because of the colour of your skin. And no matter how much we educate the next generation, and we need to keep, I think that's key, educating the next generation and trying to stem those learnt behaviours in that dad thinks this, so therefore I've got to follow it, or mum thinks this, so therefore I've got to follow it. I think for me personally, that is the key. How can we impact on the younger generation going through? So actually, mum and dad might have that opinion, but you don't have to follow that opinion. And the reality is, no one's born racist. If I look at my 3 boys, mixed race kids, I'm black, mum's white. They're lucky actually living in Norwich that they've not faced anything living in Norwich, which is really lucky for them. But they don't notice colour. They know to a certain extent if they go to their mum's nana, they have a good old fashioned English roast, Yorkshire puddings, beef, your meat, your veg, etc. If they go to Nana Forbes's, they can't wait to get down and have their rice and peas. That's their life. They don't think anything of it.
So do you think it's important to instill that in the same way that your dad put you on the train and sent you off? Do you think it's important that as parents whose children are going to be going into football, that they are educated so they do have a sense of kind of like who they are and what their cultural background is?
Yeah, 100%. And, there are lots of courses now, me with the role I've got, and, me at my club, we do a really good life skills program. And one of the things we do with all our players is about inclusion and diversity. So we make sure that we drum it home and drill it home to our players about, colours are relevant. You're going to have white players, you're going to have black players, you're going to have Asian players within your team and in your collective and in your friend zone. But we're all the same. We're all human. It doesn't matter what colour our skin is. And we will personally drum that home on a weekly, daily basis to make sure that actually, hopefully that'll affect change in our little bubble. But then when they go out of the bubble, they can obviously take that detail and take that information and instill that in others. And actually, can they go home and educate their parents if their parents need educating as well? So I think for me, education, and the next generation coming through, which will then hopefully impact on the next generation coming through after that, and then you can have the knock-on effect.
So, Adrian, we've spoken about football and racism. I'm sure that's going to come up again some more a bit later. But let's go back to 16. So, 16, you leave home and you join Norwich City.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Crazy. So you've got this young lad that's been beaten up by his 3 older sisters for so many years. Finally, I'm getting out of it. It's great. And I end up in Norwich. And interestingly, with Norwich, actually, I had Chelsea and West Ham interested in me as well. But my dad was adamant I was not going to those 2 teams. And actually, now it transpires, the reason he didn't want me to go to Chelsea was because of some of the racist stories that he had heard previously that me as an innocent 11, 12-year-old, I had no clue.
Sure.
I had no clue. But you're making me go to Norwich? Why would you want me to do that? Even though I'd been up there, I'd seen what Norwich had to offer. So you're going to send me up there where there's tractors?
Where would you have chosen to go?
Personally, I wanted to go Chelsea. It's Chelsea. It's a massive club. That is where I wanted to go. And actually, some of my mates that were in that same team, West Middlesex Colts, they'd gone to Chelsea. So I wanted to stay with my boys. But no, my dad was having none of it. Dad weren't for swaying. Dad weren't for changing. So I had to go to Norwich. And as I say, I finished my GCSE. Actually, my last GCSE was on the Friday. Mum and Dad threw me a party on the Saturday night, which I had no clue was going to happen. And then Sunday afternoon, we jumped in the Volvo and off we went to Norwich. And it seemed to take forever to get there. And the really interesting thing about that, and this goes back to what I said, or what we were just talking about the cultural differences, I then moved into a house with Janet and Mick from Norwich. Who's Janet and Mick? Oh, well, they live in this house there, and this is your room. Right, so...
Was it Yorkshire pudding?
It was Yorkshire pudding, and I'm going, but it's a pudding, and you're pouring gravy. That's not resonating and registering, because pudding you have with ice cream and custard, yeah?
Yep.
And now you're pouring gravy on it, and you're serving it with meat and potatoes. Nah, this ain't the one. But damn, it tastes good, It tastes good.
You got used to it?
I got used to it. So it's really strange, but going into a household, it was a white household. Janet and Mick, and Janet's mum, their daughter Tracy, their son Carl, and all the grandchildren.
I mean, you couldn't make those names up, could you?
Couldn't make those names up, but you know what? I'm still in touch with them now. I'm 41 years old. I'm still in touch with them. And they are, reality is, Mick was the dad I didn't know I needed, and Janet was the mum I didn't know I needed, because they looked after me like I was their other son. They couldn't do enough for me. Allowed me to basically know that I had a home from home and I could come up there and I could concentrate on football. Don't get me wrong, I still went to the phone box every night and cried to my mum and dad, I want to come home, this is so different. And I cried, and you kept, shut up and get on with it. That's what I was told. Kissing the teeth by my dad. And
you had to get on with it.
And I was told to shut up and get on with it. And you know what? A month later, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I was living with another player called Darren Kenton, who was black as well. So that helped because we had an understanding. We could have the conversations. Our upbringings were, although Darren was from Peterborough and I was from London, we still had some real key things that were similar and the same. So that certainly helped. But yeah, it was tough. And then, you know, you're going into training every day. You're having to do certain jobs. You're having to clean boots you get 2 or 3 players that you have to clean their boots and get their kit ready, as well as have other jobs. My first job was in the laundry. So I had to make sure that all the kit went into the washing machine. And the biggest thing that I never knew existed was in a tumble dryer where you could move this thing out and all the fluff gets caught.
Okay, sure.
The kit lady.
Yeah.
What's this? But I had to do it every day because it's the amount of kit that got washed, it would get filled up every day. So they're one of the key things I had to do. I had to help fold in the kit and everything. So not only did you go up there to play football, you learned some real valuable life skills as well.
Do you think 16's too young?
Personally, no. I don't think 16's too young. If I look at, say, Luton Town as an example, we've got under 7s and under 8s. I'm borderline like that, to be honest with you, under 7s and under 8s, because I'm like, play with your mates, have fun, live. 16, I think you've got to, GCSEs are done. And if we put football to one side and your son's 16, you're going to want them to go and try and forge a career and work when they finish school, when their GCSEs are done, whether that's going to university, whether that's going to college. You're going to want your child to do that. That's all that I did. My schoolwork was done. It was either university, a sixth form college, or go and do a trade. Football was my trade. So no, I don't buy into it being too young. Moving away from mum, your dad, your siblings. Now, maybe you could say for some that would be too young, but we've got to remember, I've been doing that journey across on the train.
Sure, for a long time.
Every weekend, so it didn't really faze me too much. And then, you know, as I say, I was then trying to forge my career as a footballer. I think one of the toughest things for me, to be honest with you, was I struggled with discipline. I struggled with being in a domain where people would be, you need to do this and you need to do it now. And I'd be, why are you pointing at me? If you want me to do something, ask me in the right tone and I'll do it. But I wasn't used to that domain. I wasn't used to being spoken to like that. So that took me a lot of getting used to. And I think after 6 written warnings, even though I should have had 3, hopefully my mum and dad don't get to see this back, but yeah.
Was this at 16 you were getting these?
Yeah, and what it was, I was a bit of a cheeky chappy, I was a bit of a comedian, and that was me, that was my personality. And all of a sudden I had someone trying to suppress that, and I'd rebel against it. And you tell me not to do it, well, I'm going to do it. If you tell me to do something this way, no, I'll find my own way to solve the problem and still be successful at it. And I think that came across sometimes as me just being a pain in the backside. Sure. Which actually I wasn't. And, you know, fortunately for me, I had the right people in my corner that were able to educate me, teach me how to conduct myself in that domain, which ultimately allowed me to go on and, you know, be relatively successful at Norwich.
And that's quite an important skill, right? So you've been to Norwich, but tell us some of the other clubs that you played for, because you played for a number of clubs, didn't you?
Yeah.
What were some of the other clubs?
Yeah, I think football's one of those situations where you're wanted for a period of time and it's all down to the manager at that point. And football's based on opinions. One man's opinion is one man's opinion. The next person sat next to him might think completely differently. And that's what happened with me, you know, 6 and a bit years at Norwich, and then there was a change of manager. The manager wanted a different style of player, and before I knew it, I was on the move. I then went into Luton Town, stayed at Luton for 3 years, then played for Swansea, Blackpool, Millwall, Grimsby, and then finally had to quit playing at Grimsby, having had 9 knee operations on one knee. It was time to call it a day.
How old were you then?
32. So I was fortunate enough that I'd played professional football from 17 to 32. I played for some fantastic clubs, won several promotions, you know, plenty of shirts and plenty of trophies at home. So, you know, I made the best of the ability that I had. And if I look back now, there's certain things that I probably do differently, but I actually wouldn't change a great deal of what I did, because, you know, ultimately I went on to live, you know, everyone's dream. Or sort of, let me rephrase that, a lot of young boys, lots of people's dreams.
So Adrian, tell me, what was that like at 32? when you now realise that your football career that you've been interested in since before the age of 11, and that you've travelled across London and you've left home and your three sisters that beat you up on a regular basis, and you've been in the phone box and you've cried to your parents for a while, you've been introduced to Yorkshire pudding and gravy, and you've done all of that, and now you're 32 and your career comes to an end. What happens for you? What does that feel like?
Horrible.
Tell me some more about that.
Horrible. Lost, no purpose, nothing to do. Who do I turn to? I need help. I'm used to structure. I've not got any structure. What do I do? And the reality is, how do I word this bit? The reality is, Forbesy, which everyone knows me by, disappeared for at least 18 months. And I don't know who that guy was. And I think it actually coincided, to be honest with you, it actually coincided with two things. My football career coming to an end, me not being me anymore and not being that bubbly life and soul of the party. Then marriage, that starts to come to an end because I'm not the same person that she married. So you end up going that way. But I've still got to support my boys. And I think when you've been doing something from 16 and you get to the training ground at 8:30, your jobs need to be done by 9:30. You need to be out on the training ground by 10:30. Your training finishes at 12:30. Once your training finishes at 12:30, you then go in the gym. Once you come out the gym, you go and eat because someone's already cooked that for you. Once you've done that, you finish your jobs. Everything was structured. And then you have this professional career where every Saturday, give or take, at 3 o'clock, you're running out on a pitch in front of 20, 30, 40, 50,000 fans to take part in a paid hobby and have a kick around with your mates, really. And there you are in front of everyone. Everyone wants a piece of you, whether it's an autograph or a picture. Then all of a sudden, that's just stopped. Like that. No build up to it, it's gone. And I think also what I struggled with was I always had this perception that I'd play forever.
Sure.
You're 70 Forbes, yeah, but I'm still playing. And then all of a sudden you've got this guy called Jonathan Lavelle, who was my surgeon, who without him, I don't play the 400 odd plus games that I played. But then this guy in the suit behind the desk is telling me you can't play football anymore. No. I'll make that decision. No, I'm telling you, if you want a quality of life for your kids, you can't play anymore. No, I'm telling you, I'm going to play. And that's how the conversation went. And as I say, so much respect for this man, because he saved my career by repairing my knee on numerous occasions. And then he repaired it one more time and he said, no, you're done. That's enough. There's nothing left in your knee to repair. If you play again, you're going to end up needing a complete knee replacement. Do not play again. No problem. 6 weeks later, I ran out again for Grimsby Town. Scored something like 3 goals in 5 games or something like that. Absolutely flying. Then on a Friday before a game, someone went to shoot. I stuck my leg out to stop the shot. Toe poked the ball away. Someone kicked my leg, broke my leg. Now, that action of me toe poking the ball away and someone kicking my leg would have been something that I would have done probably 1,000 times between the age of 17 and 32. Broken leg just like that. That's when I realised, someone's looking down at me and going, no, enough.
So you still actually had that level of defiance that you had, that you described earlier. Yeah. Somewhere that was still within you.
Still there. Because who are you to tell me that? Who are you to tell me that I'm not going to play anymore? But it was almost the devil and the angel situation, because I had so much respect for this guy. Because just going back to Mr. Lavelle, I was playing at Luton. So we'll come back. I'm going off topic to come back. I was playing at Luton, and I literally controlled the ball, took a touch, and was going to switch play. And then, if this is the bottom of my leg, top of the leg, bottom bit got stuck, and my rest of my leg continued to go forward. So I completely separated every single ligament within my knee. Done. Tore my medial meniscus, lateral meniscus, and anterior cruciate ligament, and a popliteus tendon in the back of the knee. All 4 done. My leg is just dangling. There's nothing holding it together.
Wow.
5 surgeons, you're done. You're never going to play again. Never going to play again. Like, you'll do well to walk. You'll do well to walk without crutches. Nothing we can do. But Mr. Lavelle said, no. What a challenge that is. I reckon I could do that. And he did. So I had so much respect for this man. And
yet still there was that thing that was saying...
Yeah, even these years later, who are you to tell me? But God, I love you for what you did for me, because without you, I don't have a career. I'm done at Luton. So there was that devil.
Is it that your career actually is also your life?
Yes, that's all I knew. That's all. And I don't want to say that's all I had, because I had the wife, had my kids. So I'm not going to say that's all I had. But that's what made me. That's what made Adrian Forbes. And that's what made me be that person that walks down the street and people will stop me for an autograph, or people will want to have a stop and have a chat when you're walking around the supermarket about football. That's what made me me, and that's what made my kids proud of me. They're proud of me because I'm their dad anyway,
Sure.
but I love the fact that my kids could see me on the TV and things like that. So yeah, and you're just whipping that away from me? Nah, I'm not having that. It was really difficult to have that person that saved my career tell me however many years later that, you know what, your career's effectively over. And I think, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I said I'll be open and brutally honest with you. I think any player that's been through that and say they come out and they're feeling totally fine about it, I'll question it. But I definitely had a period of time where I didn't know what to do, didn't know who I was. Depression sets in and you've got no clue who to turn to or what to do. Fortunately for me, I almost got found, shall we say, by someone that I knew at Norwich, a chap called Adrian Forbes, who runs Norwich's recognised charity called the Community Sports Foundation. He asked me if I wanted to come and watch some sessions where they had like local younger players playing. I thought, you know, I've got absolutely nothing else to do, so yeah, I'll come along and watch. And I think watching that, and I actually saw a couple of things going on in the training sessions, I was like, well, that's not right, that don't make sense, why would that coach do that? And that then sparked, to be honest with you, the start of my coaching journey. So it's one of those situations where I didn't want my football career to come to an end. You fall into that dark, dormant place of you don't know who to call your own, you don't know who to speak to, you don't know who to trust. Because also with that, your phone stops ringing. No one needs you anymore because you don't have anything for them. No one needs you anymore because you can't get them tickets on a Saturday. No one needs you anymore because they can't come and watch you play. No one needs you anymore because you can't get them in the nightclub to jump the queue. No one needs you anymore because you can't put them in touch with so-and-so to get you a couple of quid off this. Your phone stops ringing.
So that's really been, your career really is your life.
It is.
And so to end your career, for you, it sounds like it felt like ending your life.
End my life. Yeah, and that how I've probably never heard it put in that way, but spot on. Spot on. Football was my life. Football made me. It's through playing football that, not that was why she met me, but it's playing football that through football that I met the wife. It was playing football which is what made me end up in Norwich. Playing football was everything, was my being. That was all I knew. And all of a sudden you're told you can no longer do that. And actually foolishly you've got no idea what to do next, because you've not actually planned for football ever stopping. Yeah, you don't have a purpose, you don't have a life, so what's the point? So what's the point? And it's one of those situations where you're in that darker place. I can remember, you know, my highlight of my day was waking up in the morning with the kids because the wife was doing a nursing degree, she wanted to be a midwife. So she'd get up and she'd go. But the highlight of my day was, oh boys, what's gonna be in the packed lunch today? And what am I gonna cook for dinner this evening? What time can I do the school run? That was the highlight of my day. Gone from professional footballer to the highlight of the day is standing in the playground waiting for your son. What's your world come to? What's your life come to? This is no life. And it was a real battle. And I can remember days where I'd do that school run in the morning, go home and get in bed. Shut the curtains, just get in bed, set my alarm. If I sleep till 2:30, then the day's done. I can then have my babies. Next day, do the school run. If I can sleep till 2:30, another day gone. That was my life for probably 8-9 months.
What do you think, Adrian, about the conversations that have been had about mental health, really? Because that's what we're talking about, about mental health and footballers. What do you think about that?
I think there'll be countless footballers out there that will suffer from mental health issues in the way that I did, and I wholeheartedly say I struggled massively mentally when my time came to an end. But there'll also be a lot of players that will be struggling with it when they're actually playing, because also, you know, the thing with being that professional footballer is you're constantly on the go. You're constantly in someone's eyesight. You're constantly being watched. You know, I'll give you an example of constantly being watched. I was back in Norwich, I'd finished playing, and I was with one of the Norwich players at the time who I happened to play with at Blackpool. And I was in Pizza Hut with the wife and my kids. He was in Pizza Hut with the wife and his kids. We're all at one big table, just having a chat and having a pizza. And I can hear this couple on the other table, and this father and son are going, yeah, but they didn't play for Norwich together. So how do they know each other? Forbesy left years ago. Forbesy doesn't coach for the first team. How does he know him? And they're having a full-blown conversation about me and my mate. And in their head, they're whispering and we can't hear. We can hear it clearly. And all we want to do on a Sunday afternoon is just have some time with our family. In the end, we actually said, look, do you want a picture? Oh, we'd love one, is that all right? So they had the picture, got an autograph, and then they were fine after that. But I just wanted to use that story to give a bit of an understanding of the detail. You're constantly on the go and constantly in the public eye, constantly looking over your shoulder, constantly wondering who's looking at you and why they're looking at you.
Adrian, you have a great story about when you were out shopping and whilst pushing your trolley around the supermarket as everyone else does, someone looks in your trolley and sees the contents of your trolley.
Yeah. And,
tell me about
that. That wasn't even long ago. You know, that was probably 3 years ago, and I was with my new partner now actually, and I've got my 3 boys, and she's actually got 5 kids. So we're obviously in Sainsbury's, and there's just Christmas time. Not gonna lie, there's one food trolley and there's one alcohol trolley, and I'm pushing the alcohol trolley because it's heavier. And some chap goes to me, "Well, that's not on, is it?" I beg your pardon. What? You're a disgrace. You should know better. You're an athlete. You're a professional footballer. You should be teaching people how to behave, not drinking all that alcohol. I'm 38 years old. I haven't played football for 6 years. And now you're coming after me. Yeah, you should know better. And he wouldn't get it. He didn't understand it. In his head, it's Adrian Forbes. You're an athlete, you're a footballer, you should not be drinking alcohol. The fact that I've got one knee that needs a knee replacement and I can't run anyway, can't play football is irrelevant. But in that person's perception of me is I'm still that person that they used to see running around. And at the time, the interesting bit, at the time, Norwich were actually in a little bit of a bad run. So in his head, I just linked the two. Norwich are playing rubbish, it's your fault because you're drinking alcohol. But it's Christmas, A, and B, I don't play for the football club. Yes, I was a coach there at the time. But that, again, it's interesting that you've brought that up. That just gives you another understanding of always being in the public eye. Now, I'm walking around the supermarket minding my own business. Same as millions and millions and millions and millions of people around the world leading up to Christmas. They're getting their treats in. They're getting their alcohol in because they're going to be socialising. They're going to have friends coming around. I'm no different. Yes, I was a footballer, but I'm still a human being. I've still got a life. I've still got a family. I'm still allowed to have a drink when I want to. But yeah, that's the sort of thing that you still got to deal with. And even now, you know, whilst I work for Luton, I still live in Norwich. And yeah, you don't really go anywhere without someone knowing you or recognising you. But now I'm that touch older, it's a little bit different. And actually the treatment I get and the way people look up to me and speak to me is totally fine. But it's just important for people to know that you are constantly in the public eye. And let's be fair, I had a good career, but nowhere on in the bracket of your Ronaldos or your Messis or your Wayne Rooneys or people like that. How they manage it, how they cope with it, I don't know, because sometimes it is a struggle. I
guess you must have some real admiration for those guys. Yeah. Because if you're thinking about the things that you experienced, you know now that theirs is probably at a higher level. Yeah, it is, and it's even with my kids, you know, bless them, there's nothing they can do with that. You know, my boys are trying to forge their own way in life. My oldest two are good footballers at their level. My 11-year-old's quite happy to kick his brothers. That's his football, just kicking them. But even there, oh, you're Forbes' son. No, I'm Jordan. Sure. Oh, you're Forbes' son. No, I'm Ryan. And little Mason, oh, you're Forbes' son. Who's Forbesy? Your dad? Oh, yeah. Why are you asking me if I'm Forbes' son? I'm Mace. He doesn't get it because he didn't see me play, so he has no understanding. Okay. But yeah, the big two now just laugh about it. And, you know, I've got to the point where I'm saying, well, sometimes, boys, if that's what they're saying, you might have to use that to your advantage sometimes. If that, Jordan, who's now 20, you know, if that's going to get you to the front of the queue, drop it in. Why queue in the rain when you can get in? Perks of the job. If someone's going to get you in for free and the next guy's paying a tenner because he ain't got your name, get yourself in there, son, not a problem. Or ask Dad, I'll get you on the guest list. But he used to struggle with that for a long time. He wouldn't do it. And I'd say to him, as an example, where are you going tonight, son? I'm going so-and-so. Do you want me to ring up and get you sorted? Nah, don't do that. I can't be walking to the front of the queue. I can't. He really struggled with that because he wants to be known as him, as Jordan Forbes, not Forbes' son. And actually, you know, now I actually think about it, I quite admire them for that they want to forge their own, but they know what their dad was and they know who their dad is. But to them, I'm still Dad, the idiot that runs around the house hiding, playing pranks and being basically the class clown. That's Dad to them. And that's so important, isn't it? That's really important. Because I guess now, first and foremost, you are a father, and then comes your career
Yeah.
in coaching. So let's talk about that, Adrian. Let's talk about coaching. So you started off as a coach in Norwich City.
Yeah.
So you explained about, you know, making some observations of, you know, some matches that you saw. What next?
Well, what next again? Depression, do I coach? Depression, do I coach? Depression, I promised the wife that when I finish playing, it's about her and she can go and become the midwife she wants to be. But I've got depression, but I could be a good coach. But depression, it was a real big mix, and I had to make a decision. And the decision was, which probably to my detriment in the end with my marriage to a certain extent, was I couldn't sit at home any longer and do nothing, because I knew inside I was crumbling. So I had to get that purpose back. And actually what I was realizing was I was going to watch these sessions and I was helping these young coaches just by going, have you thought about doing it this way? Have you thought about doing that? Or, young man, have you thought about receiving the ball like this? And if you've got the body, if the pitch is that way and you're facing that way and you receive the ball, you can't see what's going on behind you. So what about if you just spin your hips? And I was actually having an impact on these players. And I thought, Then before I know it, there was a part-time role came up with Norwich City's recognised charity, the Community Sports Foundation. I thought, I'll apply for that. I haven't got a CV. How do you apply for jobs? What do you do? Because again, from 16 to 32, my CV was 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon.
Wow.
And prospective employers were sat in the stand watching me play. I didn't need a sheet of paper to hand in, here's what's a reference? What's a reference? I've got no idea what you're going on about. I had no clue. So I didn't know where to start. Unfortunately, again, you know, to be fair to the people at Community Sports Foundation in Thornton, he knew that and he understood that, and he actually helped me get a CV together. He did say, you're gonna have to apply for the job like everyone else, but I will help you put a CV together. Fortunately, got the job, gave me an opportunity. And then off the back of that, actually, I stayed there for 6 months, had a real big impact. It then went from a full-time role to a part-time role. Myself and one other chap called Dan Goffin running the whole of their football development centres, which was 48 staff, 9 different venues and 1,012 players from under 9s to under 16s, just 2 of us running it. So
it's a lot of players.
A lot of players, but we've made a success of it. And also in that period of time as well, an opportunity came to go back to Norwich City's Academy, which is the Community Sports Foundation and the Academy are 2 separate entities, but under the same bracket. The opportunity came for me to go and work on a part-time basis at the Academy, which is then working with young footballers that are young professionals to a certain extent who are on the journey to become Norwich City footballers. And I ended up doing some part-time stuff there as well. So I was working with the community program during the day and then the academy in the evening. And actually when I was in the academy, I came across a chap called Paul Nevin. Now Paul is currently first team coach at West Ham. Black player, black coach. Wow, you're good. Now I want to be like you. I've done the David Rocastle bit. Now I want to be you. Nevins. Yeah, I want to be you, Paul Nevin. I want to be you. I want to be you. And we got on really well. And I remember him saying to me, he was really impressed with how I work. And he said, but I can't afford to bring you in full time. But if ever there's an opportunity to get you in the academy full time, I promise you, Adrian, we'll take it. Brilliant, okay. 6 months later, he left. Great.
Wow.
Cheers, Paul. Really appreciate that. Guess you're not going to get me in. Then randomly, I can remember being in the community offices, which is actually based at the main stadium. And in came the academy manager, so my boss at my part-time role with the academy, and the new head of coaching, the chap that replaced Paul Nevin. And they go in to speak to my boss at the community program, and I'm nervous as I'm thinking it's got to be about me. They've never been in it before, it's got to be about me. Then, sure as hell, 10 minutes later, Forbes, you got a minute? I'm like, oh wow, what have I done? What have I done? Now let's go back to angry Adrian. I'm on the defensive straight away. I went, yeah, well, let's see what they got for me. What are they going to come for me? What have I done? Because I'm going to go back. And basically it transpires that the Premier League had put together a program called the Elite Coaches Apprenticeship Scheme. Now this scheme was based around giving people an opportunity to get a full-time role within an academy setup. And what they earmarked was 2 roles for, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't like using the term, but I'll word it because it's relevant, a BAME candidate. Okay, that's another story.
That's a whole show.
That's another story, but I think we're on the same wavelength.
That's a whole show.
The BAME candidate, they opened up 3 funded places for 2 BAME candidates and 2 female coaches. So myself, I was one of the first BAME candidates to get an opportunity and get the funding from the Premier League to go into Norwich City. But the person that put this together at the Premier League was Paul Nevin. He left Norwich to go to the Premier League, stayed true to his word, told me he was going to come and get me in when he could, and he did. That came with a 4-year contract to go and work in the academy, which obviously I took, which meant leaving the community programme to go and take on this full-time role with the academy. And then, to be honest with you, after that, it just progressed from there. I only went in to coach the under-9s and 10s. I was in charge of that to start off with. Then that evolved to being in charge of the under-9s, the under-10s, the under-11s and under-12s. Having a bit of exposure, working with some of the older age groups as well. But whilst doing that as well, I was on the tannoy for Norwich City as well, announcing the teams when they came out on the pitch, hosting the odd event for them as well. So it was quite a well-rounded role that was working for the football club and the academy. And then, I just looked at, well, I'm in here now, what else do I need? What else do I want to do? Because I saw that now as going back to being that kid at 16 that moved to Norwich in the hope of being a successful footballer. I'm now starting again in the hope of being a successful coach stroke manager. Got to get qualifications. I only had 2, which were my level 2, and I just about finished my UEFA B. So then it was like, well, there's a whole
Are those coaching qualifications?
They're coaching qualifications. They're mandatory qualifications now that you'd need to work in an academy. And I'm in a fortunate position that I've gone on since then and got UEFA B licence, my UEFA A licence, my 3 youth modules. They're called Youth Module 1, 2 and 3, the Advanced Youth Module, and also the Advanced Youth Award, and a degree in sports coach development as well. So I've worked my socks off in between 33 and now 41 to get all those qualifications, and now I'm in a situation where the only one I don't have is my pro license, which I will be starting, I think it's July next year. So, the coaching journey is something that I love, and the reason I got into it was I've had all these experiences from the age of 16, 17, and actually I've had all these experiences from 11. If I felt that if I didn't give someone the knowledge and the detail of those experiences, I'm a failure. And I was scared of being a failure again. I'd gone through the depression situation and I felt a failure. You failed because you couldn't continue your career. You failed because you couldn't keep playing. You failed because you didn't do. That's how I saw myself. Evidently, I wasn't a failure.
What is the age, though, at which you would... Is there a cut-off point at which you stop playing football?
I think most people say professional footballers get their pension at 35. So I think that's what most people would say. If you can get to 35, you've done well. I stopped 3 years short of that. I didn't do too bad. I was fortunate to play for some great clubs. I was nowhere near a failure. But in my head at that time, because someone pulled that rug away from me, I did feel like a failure. And I was adamant that I wasn't going to fail from a coaching point of view again. And I was adamant that I wasn't going to fail young, up-and-coming footballers that wanted to be like me. David Rocastle, someone wanted to be like me. I was going to give them every opportunity to realise that dream. And by doing that, I knew I had to upskill myself to make me better. Better at becoming a coach, but also be better at giving across my knowledge to these young players. And, I love the journey. It's been so rewarding, so fulfilling, and seeing so many players that with my knowledge, with my information that I've given them, I've played a small part in helping them achieve their dream of becoming professional footballers. But I'm not stopping now. There's so much more for me to learn, so much more for me to gain. And, my next challenge and my next step is, I now want to become a manager, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure I can achieve that.
Fantastic. But Adrian, before we go, I just want to ask you, based on your experience of suddenly having to stop playing football, you've now gone on to explain actually that although it felt like your life had ended, your career was certainly over, you felt like a failure, you experienced depression, but you've now gone on to be very successful in another area of football. What do you think could be done? What would you say retrospectively is an important aspect to fill that gap, that dark hole that you fell into? How can that gap be bridged? I
think that's twofold. I think number one, I would say, is the importance of, again, if we go back to what I was saying about educating the next generation, I think it's my duty now to educate the next generation on the importance of having a plan B for either when your football journey doesn't happen, i.e. you get to 16 and no one wants you, so you can't become a footballer. What are you going to do? If that's your dream and that's what you set up to do and you don't achieve it, what are you going to do? But then also when your career comes to an end, whether it be through injury, whether it be through the fact that you're just an old boy and you can't run around the pitch anymore so no one wants you, what are you going to do next? And that was my biggest problem. I didn't have a plan B. As I said ages ago, I was going to play till 70.
Sure.
Age isn't going to get me and I'm going to be able to run forever. No, but I had no plan B. I grew up loving cars. And now I look back and actually I probably should have done something around that, whether it be building them, whether it be designing them, whether it be selling them. I should have had probably an idea of that, but I didn't. And then as soon as that rug was pulled away, and I said earlier, no purpose, I had nothing to fall back on. So I didn't have a secondary purpose or a secondary thing that I could do to put food on the table for the kids, put food on the table for the wife, etc. I was in a fortunate position that I did okay financially with the amount of clubs I played for and the time I had. So there was a roof over the head. That was never going to be a problem. But I didn't have anything to fall back on. So for me, I think that's vital. People knowing throughout their journey that it is going to come to an end at some point, and what are you going to do next, I think it's vital. I really do think it's vital. And I think after that as well, I think it's having an understanding of the people that are around you to help and support you, and making sure you pick the right people that are there to help and support you. As I say, my phone stopped ringing. So all those people that I thought were in my corner, all those people that I thought were there to help and support me, they weren't there. And actually what I ended up doing, a lot of the people that I probably knew were there to help and support me, I didn't know if I could trust them anymore. And probably if you spoke to my mum and dad, they would probably say I fell off the radar for a period of time.
Sure.
Of course I can trust my mum and dad. But even then I was a little bit, why are they ringing me? What have I done? What do they need to speak to me for? I've got no interest in them anymore. That was how I felt. So definitely having a plan B, something to fall back on, but also making sure you've got a trusted circle of people around you that you can call upon when you need them. Because I'm pretty certain that when you're playing, you're in that football domain, they'll find several reasons why they need you. But the tables have got to turn at some point, and make sure you have those right people around you.
Is there a service though for footballers who might be experiencing depression?
There is. You've got places like Sporting Chance, which is run by or put together by the ex-player Tony Adams. You've got the Professional Football Association, the PFA, who are there to support you as well. And yeah, there's people you can pick up the phone to, and there's people you can speak to. But I think the one thing I've realised with things like that is you're speaking to someone that's anonymous. So how can you have that trusted person within your circle that knows you, that understands you, that gets you, that knows what makes you tick, that will actually recognise and notice those moods,
Sure.
And notice those key things that aren't right about you to then help you. And having someone that can actually go, "You're right, mate. Yeah, I'm fine." "Well, you're not, are you? Come on, what's wrong?" Someone to do that. But there are the likes of, say, Sporting Chance and the PFA that are on hand to be that trusted body or that trusted person on the end of the phone to help and support you and signpost you to any other help that you may need. But it's a big ask for someone to just pick up the phone and speak to someone anonymously.
Sure.
And it takes time, it takes confidence. But I think having that inner circle is, for me, far more important.
Adrian, what does it mean to be a black coach?
Well, I think if we go back to when I said, or what I spoke about with David Rocastle at the start, and the importance of me having someone to look up to, that role model, or almost, I don't want to say a mentor, but someone that, you look at and go, I want to be like that person. I'm aspiring to be almost a carbon copy of them. I now see that as my role. It's well documented that, it's a massive underrepresentation of black managers and black coaches in the game when there's 90 plus league football clubs. How can that be? So, I now see myself in a really privileged and prominent position to have, be at Luton Town, where I am the head of coaching for the whole football club. I've had a period of time where I've been Luton Town's first team coach for 4 or 5 months during lockdown. And, I was that first team coach that worked with the first team manager to help the club stay in the championship. Massive achievement, but I was there. So I see it almost as a duty for me, to be able to hopefully look at the next generation of young black footballers that are playing now that might have a dream or an aspiration to go into coaching. Can they look at me and go, wow, I've seen him on the telly, I want to be like him. Wow, look at his journey from working in the club's charity to then working into an academy, then getting a head of coach's role, then being a first team coach. Can someone look at me and go, wow, I want to be like him, in the same way I looked at David Rocastle? And I think if I can do that, and I can have people look up to me, and I'm on hand to mentor any young black footballers or coaches I'm on hand to mentor them and help them. If we can hopefully change the narrative at the moment where we are represented massively, and change people's perceptions of us as they're good footballers but they'll never make it in management, I think we've achieved something massive. I think we've got a long way to go with that. but I'm hoping I can be that person that can break down those barriers, break down some walls, and maybe one day be that manager that's been successful. And I think I'm in a really fortunate position now at Luton Town, where I've got a board of people, custodians of the club, that genuinely, hand on heart, want to give me an opportunity to be a success. And when I say they want me to be a success, they are opening my eyes to every aspect of their football club, from being in board meetings to, as I say, being with the first team, to allow me to ask questions and almost giving me the opportunity to fail. But they're only allowing me to fail once, because once I've failed once and I've been honest with that failure, they're going, right, this is what you need to do. This is how we deal with this situation, so I don't fail again. So I'm taking that, I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to make the best possible success of it. And hopefully by me making a success of myself as a young, I say young at 41, young black aspiring coach stroke manager, there's going to be another lad out there that will look at me and want to copy and follow in my footsteps. And if I can achieve that, it'll be a job well done.
I love that. You've given a real insight to the life of a footballer. You've spoken about the highlights, you've spoken about the areas that were really difficult, you spoke about some of the challenges, you spoke about having to really mature as a 16-year-old and how difficult that was. You've spoken about racism in football, and you've spoken about some really awful injuries whilst playing football, but about a surgeon who repaired your knee and who you're very grateful for. What would you like to say to your dad for the advice that he's given you over the years?
Wow. This is going to sound really silly. I hated him for some of the advice he gave me, and we talk about this, and me and my dad have laughed about this on numerous occasions, because I will openly say to him, I resented the fact that you made me go to Norwich. Why have you made me go to Norwich? Did you want rid of me? Did you want me out of the house? Did you want to use my room as a spare room, did you? You sent me up there? And we laugh about it now, and I'll go off topic to come back. Since moving to Luton, Luton's only half an hour from my mum and dad's. So what actually happened prior to the virus, I would actually stay at my mum and dad's twice a week. And the beauty of staying at my mum and dad's 40/41 years old, 2-3 nights a week, without the rest of my sisters there, it's just me, my mum and dad. And actually I was starting to rebuild those years of leaving from 16, and we would have the biggest laughs. Just me and my dad. Dad sat there with a can of Tennent's, just as he does. Same dad that I would sit down before and like,
sure,
Tennent's, that stuff tastes like petrol, But what we did is we built that bond back again. And I could sit down openly and go with him, Dad, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't happy with you. I did resent the fact that you sent me to Norwich. But he will always say, yeah, but I had my reasons for doing that. And he always goes back to, but you were successful. It worked out for you, so why do you resent me? Yeah, but you made me leave my family. You made me leave my friends. But now as a dad, myself, I now see that you made the right decision. And the one thing I'll say for my dad now, when I talked a few minutes ago about that trusted circle, he was my trusted circle without me even knowing or understanding the importance of having that trusted circle, because I was 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And the fact that he was making a decision for me, knowing full well it wasn't the decision that I wanted to make, he took that decision away from me and he made it for me. And my God, Dad, thank you ever so much for making that decision, because making that decision has allowed me to go on and have a career. Making that decision has allowed me to go and be Adrian Forbes that I am now. Making that decision, despite the fact that I moan about that chap stopping me in Sainsbury's because I shouldn't be drinking the alcohol, if my dad doesn't make that decision for me, it's not a celebrity, but I'm not famous in that person's bubble. If he doesn't make that decision for me, we're not having this conversation now, probably. So, Dad, thank you ever so much. And also, lastly on that as well, I'd probably say, Dad, thank you for teaching me how to be a dad. If that makes any sense. I like that. Dad, thank you for teaching me how to be a dad, because for all those times where he would discipline me, he would tell me off, and the one sentence he would say, if you can't hear, you're going to feel. And I say that to my boys now and they laugh because they get it.
You've morphed into
I've morphed into my dad, and I say things and like, oh God, why have you just done that? Because you sound just like him. But that's the reality. And so
was Mum your silent? Was she the silent partner in all of this?
I was just actually going to say, but I don't want Mum to come away with it and it will be about Dad, Dad, Dad. Almost coming across like he was a single parent to a certain extent. No, Mum was there, but she was different. She was that different person where she wasn't interested in sport. So her sport just went straight overhead. So me and Dad were about football. All she was interested in was, am I okay? Am I all right? So it was more, Dad taught me about the manners and the respect and everything, whereas Mum taught me the silly little bits. I love cooking now. I love cooking. And as I said earlier, you know, I'm no longer with the mother of my kids. But I have my boys on a Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and they go back to their mum on a Thursday afternoon. So they're actually with me more than they are their mum. I love cooking. I absolutely love cooking and, you know, trying different things. But that stems from mum. So mum taught me the other side of things. And, you know, by no means am I a male chauvinist, but you go back to that era, it was where the lady did everything and the man went out to work. But when the lady was at home doing stuff, my mum would do a 9 till 9, come home and cook, and then go and do the same again the next day. But when she was home, because she wasn't home that often, I wanted to be with her cooking. Oh, why'd you do that? Why'd you put that in there? Why, Mum, why don't you just take the skin off the chicken instead of burning the hairs off? What are you doing? What are you doing? And it's innocent little things like that now. I still remember, and I can picture her doing that. And I've brought it with me. I take the skin off the chicken.
You
now.
don't burn the hairs.
I don't burn the hairs off now. I think my kids would look at me going, what in the world are you doing if I did that? But those little bits are what I remember. I don't want, my dad wasn't not loving at all, but those loving little bits that I got from my mum, the two came together brilliantly. I had the discipline side of things from my dad, but also knew that, Mum, I'm struggling with this. I can't really talk to Dad, but Mum, can you help me with this? Dad would be the one that would get in the car after training and go, you need to do this, 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 and this better if you want to. So you want to be a footballer, you need to do this, 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 and this. And I'd come home and be flat because Dad's just absolutely roasting me in the car. Yeah, all right, son. Yeah, and Dad was a bit negative. Well, don't worry, training again tomorrow. You can go and put it right, can't you? Yeah, actually, Mum, yeah. Yeah, you're right, I can, because I've got a session, bro. And she would just give me that little side of things. So I would say, whilst I say, Dad, thank you for showing me how to be a dad, I say it from that point of view because I'm the man in my boy's life. And with not being mum and dad together to have a whole rounded, don't get me wrong, mum is in their life and she's with them a lot, but I can only look at it from the man and the dad in life. So Dad, thank you for teaching me how to be a dad, but also from mum's point of view, thank you for teaching me how to look after them and how to, I don't want to say pamper them's not the word. Teaching me how to. It might be pamper. It might be teaching how to love them and, you know, little things of, I can sit with them and teach my 11-year-old to put his quilt on. Dad weren't teaching me that. Dad weren't teaching me that.
That's important. That's really important.
But it is. So it was almost those life skills things that I was picking up from mum by being inquisitive and asking, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? They're the extra bits that I learned from mum. So I thank them both wholeheartedly for the help, the support they've given me to allow me to achieve my goal and allow me to achieve my dream and fulfilling that dream. And actually, I did an interview a few weeks ago for Sky, and one of the things that Mum put it on the family WhatsApp group, and my mum actually said, oh, like, we're so proud of you, this, that, and the other. And that was probably one of the first times that they openly said, I'm proud of you. And I was a bit like, whoa, I'm 41. And it's there in print, screenshot. I'm keeping that because it's done. And I actually replied, don't ever take for granted, don't ever take for granted or don't underestimate the fact that I was thinking of that every time you sacrificed by getting me to Norwich or buying me my football boots or this, that and the other. Don't think for a second I took that for granted. And that is why I worked my socks off to achieve what I achieved, so I would make you proud. So it was actually so fulfilling to see that in print. And that was I'm 41 and I left home at 16, so
better late than
never. Better late than never.
Adrian Forbes, Luton Town head coach, thank you so much for being a guest on Patricia Talks.
Thank you for having me.
And so to Glanford Park, another good away day. Super individual goal by Adrian Forbes. Little dick, header for Forbes. 3 goals to 0 to Luton. Adrian Forbes.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.